Picture this. You walk into a sunny downtown restaurant to grab a quiet lunch, and there she is, your partner, laughing, leaning in close, touching hands with her ex. Not 600 kilometers away like she claimed, not with her family like she swore, but right there, cheating, smiling like she hasn't smiled with you in months. Now imagine keeping a straight face, not confronting her, and instead planning the coldest, cleanest revenge of your life. Because that's exactly what one man did, and it became legendary. If you've ever been cheated on, underestimated, or treated like a backup character in your own life, then hit that like button, subscribe to Revenge Time X for more stories where karma doesn't wait, it shows up early. Now let's dive into one of the most satisfying real-life revenge stories I've ever covered. My name's Alex, and a few years ago, my best friend, we'll call him Mark, was living with his girlfriend of 4 years, Lena. They'd moved in together at a time when everything felt perfect. Same taste in music, same dark humor, same Friday night Netflix ritual. But like most long-term relationships, real life set in. Bills, stress, exhaustion, little arguments that never get fully resolved. They hang in the air like humidity. Mark was trying. He really was. But Lena, she was drifting. The late-night texts she always hid. The sudden girls' nights. The distance, physical, emotional, everything. You know that sinking feeling in your stomach? The one where your body knows something is wrong before your mind admits it? Yeah, Mark lived with that for months. The suspicious trip. One Thursday morning, Lena casually announced, "I'm going to visit my parents next week. Just for a few days. It'll help me clear my head." Her family lived 600 kilometers away. Not a spontaneous trip by any means. But Mark, being Mark, nodded, tried to be supportive, and told her to take the time she needed. She packed light, too light. Barely anything, actually. Just enough clothing for a weekend, not a week. Mark noticed. His stomach tightened. Something wasn't right, but he still let her go. Because trust, or at least the memory of trust, is a powerful thing. The betrayal. A few days into her family visit, Mark went out for lunch alone. The weather was nice, warm, with a soft breeze carrying the smell of baked bread from a cafe nearby. He sat down at an outdoor patio, took out his phone, and glanced around. And then he froze, because at another table, just 20 feet away, was Lena, laughing, glowing, holding hands with her ex-boyfriend like she was living a second life. It was the kind of laughter she hadn't shared with Mark in months. He didn't cause a scene, didn't yell, didn't storm over. He pulled out his phone and snapped photos, clear, undeniable, time-stamped proof. His hands shook, his heartbeat hammered in his ears. He felt the sting behind his eyes, that mixture of heartbreak and absolute clarity. But he didn't approach her. He quietly paid for his food, stood up, and walked away. Because in the few seconds it took to take those photos, something inside him snapped into focus. He was done. The plan begins. Mark lived in an apartment under a month-to-month lease, but with one catch. He had to give 60 days notice. Lena wasn't on the lease at all, which meant he wasn't trapped. He went home that same afternoon and sat down with his landlord, a chill older guy named Mr. Donnelly. Mark showed him the photos. The landlord sighed, looked at Mark for a long moment, then said, "I'm sorry, kid, but if you want out, I'll keep quiet." They shook hands. That handshake sealed Lena's fate, and she had no idea. The cold, calculated weeks. When Lena returned from her trip, she acted strangely calm, almost too casual, like she'd already emotionally moved on, but wanted to keep the apartment perks while she figured out her next move. Mark noticed she didn't initiate affection, didn't try to connect, didn't even seem guilty. And whenever she said, "I'm staying at a friend's tonight," Mark simply replied, "Okay." No jealousy, no confrontation, no questions. Inside, he was screaming, but outside, he was ice. He even suggested couples therapy once, knowing she'd reject it. Which she did, with an annoyed sigh, like he was inconveniencing her by caring. These weeks were torture for him, but necessary. Because while she slipped away at night, thinking she was getting away with everything, Mark was quietly packing, selling, organizing, and preparing the ultimate silent exit. The landlord's role. Mark and the landlord coordinated everything. Potential new tenants came by, but only when Lena was at work or out with her affair partner. They would walk through the apartment while Mark stood there quietly, praying Lena wouldn't unexpectedly come home early. He wanted the reveal to be perfect, clean, devastating. A breakup is painful, but being left behind by someone who already thought they'd replaced you, that's a different kind of punishment. Moving day. It was a crisp Saturday morning. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the air had that silent stillness of a day that hasn't started. At exactly 7 a.m., the moving crew arrived. Large boxes, Tape. Dollies. Boots thumping on the floor as they began packing everything. Because almost all the furniture belonged to Mark. Lena woke up groggy, confused. What the hell is going on? Mark stayed calm, so calm it scared her. He didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't shake. He simply walked over to the kitchen counter and laid out the photos. The ones of her with her ex on that restaurant patio. Her face drained of color. Mark, I can explain. No need. She looked around at the boxes, at the emptying shelves, at her tiny pile of belongings in the corner, clothes and toiletries, the only things in the apartment that were actually hers. Right then, Mr. Donnelly appeared in the doorway, hands in his pockets, expression neutral. You've got until midnight to get your stuff out, he said. New tenants are moving in 2 days. If it's still here after midnight, it goes on the curb. Lena's mouth dropped open. You can't do that. He raised an eyebrow. You're not on the lease. That shut her up instantly. Her reaction. First came shock, then denial, then anger, the kind that comes from losing control, not from remorse. She tried. We were just talking. You misunderstood. It wasn't what it looked like. Why didn't you say something sooner? Every line felt rehearsed. She wasn't devastated to lose Mark. She was devastated to lose the apartment, the stability, the convenience. Mark let her talk, let her spin herself in circles. Then he simply said, I'm done. No drama, no long speech, just the finality she earned. The final snapshot, as the movers cleared out the last piece of furniture, Lena sat on the floor, surrounded by a sad pile of her belongings. No bed, no couch, no table, just clothes and a toothbrush. Mark stood at the doorway, lifted his phone, and took one last picture, not to humiliate her, not to post online, but as a reminder to himself of the moment he chose self-respect over betrayal. Then he walked out. The movers followed. The landlord locked the door behind them, and Lena was officially on her own. Why this revenge hit hard? Because Mark never screamed, never begged, never stooped to her level. He simply gathered evidence, got his lease approved, moved out, and let her face the consequences of her own actions. No noise, no mess, just cold, precise execution. For years after, our friend group referred to that day as the silent shutdown, because sometimes the loudest revenge is walking away so quietly, the other person hears the absence louder than any words. The cherry on top? 2 months later, Lena messaged him. Can we talk? He didn't reply. She messaged again. I'm sorry. Can we meet? Just to get closure? Still nothing. He didn't block her. He didn't engage. He just let her messages sit there, unread, like ghosts floating in a conversation she no longer had access to. And the best part, years later when our group of friends gets together, someone always brings up Mark's move-out day. And every time, Mark smiles. Not out of spite, not out of arrogance, but because he chose dignity over drama. And won. You know, it's wild. People always think revenge means screaming, smashing, or blowing up someone's life. But sometimes, it simply means leaving them behind, with nothing more than the mess they made for themselves. Karma doesn't always come with thunder. Sometimes it comes with a moving truck at 7 a.m. If this story gave you chills, or made you want to cheer, smash that like button. Tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen or experienced?